Music drifted through the portico like melted butter over warm bread. At table 42, Elena set her fingertips on the rim of her wine glass, eyes cast down, lips barely moving. "Please don't hurt me." Malik heard every syllable over the gentle percussion of silver on china. He tilted his tray slightly, shielding half his face from the husband's line of sight. No one else in the dining room noticed that table 42 had just changed its atmospheric pressure. Malik reached into his apron pocket. Not for a weapon. Not for a blade folded in cloth. He withdrew a leather billfold that held the check, the kind of gesture every patron in this room had seen 1,000 times, and inside the fold, hidden against the backing, a small card printed with 3 lines. "Are you safe? Not if you need help. I can call discreet support." He slid the card beneath the edge of the linen napkin, positioning it where the candlelight would not reach. At the same instant, the toe of his shoe pressed a pedal beneath the service station, the restaurant's silent alarm. Elena looked up briefly, her eyes dark as harbor water at midnight. She blinked once. Anyone else at table 42 would have read it as a breath. To Malik, it was consent. At the neighboring table, Luca raised his glass to a guest and smiled. Malik pivoted smoothly into the choreography of pouring wine, his hand steady enough that the candle flame never wavered. In the span of time it took for a wick to burn down 1 millimeter, 2 strangers had signed an invisible contract. She would not be alone, he would not act recklessly. They would choose truth and safety. The room hummed with the low murmur of 70-some conversations, the clink of crystal, the rustle of pressed linen. Portico had been designed to feel like old money, the kind of place where deals were made over butter-poached lobster and promises were sealed with a nod. Malik had worked here for 3 years, long enough to recognize the microlanguage of a dining room, the angle of a shoulder, the pause before ordering, the way a hand reached for a napkin, and then hesitated. Tonight, table 42 spoke a dialect he had learned to read in a training session most servers never attended. The woman wore a dress the color of deep plum, long sleeves despite the warmth of the room. When she adjusted her cuff, Malik caught the shadow of a bruise, pale green fading to yellow. The man beside her, Luca Bianchi, had the kind of smile that looked expensive, the kind that cost other people. He ordered for both of them without asking. He touched her wrist when she reached for the menu. He laughed at something the guest across the table said, and Elena flinched as though the sound had been a shout. Malik finished pouring the wine and stepped back, letting the rhythm of service carry him toward the kitchen. He moved through the room like water finding its level, never rushing, never drawing attention. Behind the swinging doors, the heat and noise of the kitchen rose to meet him. Chef Anna stood at the pass, her hands moving in the efficient choreography of plating, but her eyes tracked him as he approached. "Code Amber," he said quietly, setting the tray down. Table 42. Anna's hands did not pause. She finished the garnish on a duck breast, wiped the edge of the plate, and nodded once. "Who?" "The woman. Plum dress. Bruising on the left wrist. Husband's name is Luca Bianchi," she just signaled. Anna reached for the phone mounted on the wall beside the spice rack. Code Amber was not written in any employee handbook that corporate reviewed. It was something else. A protocol that lived in the space between policy and conscience, the kind of system built by people who had seen too much and decided to do something about it. She dialed 3 digits, internal extension, and spoke softly. "We have an Amber at 42. Alert security. Monitor all exits. No heroics." Malik returned to the dining room with a basket of bread. He moved through the stations, refilling water glasses, checking on tables, playing the role he had been hired to play. But his attention remained anchored to table 42. Elena had found the card. Her fingers rested on the napkin, just above where the card lay hidden. She did not look at Malik, but her posture had shifted slightly, her spine a fraction straighter. Luca leaned toward her, his voice too low for Malik to hear, but the tone carried. It was the sound of someone reminding another person of the rules. Elena nodded, her chin dipping twice. She reached for her water glass and took a sip, and when she set it down, her hand trembled. Malik approached the table with the bread basket. "May I offer you a selection from our artisan bakery?" His voice was even, professional, the kind of voice that carried no weight beyond courtesy. Luca waved him off. "We're fine." "Of course." Malik turned to Elena. "If there's anything you need, please let me know." Her eyes met his for half a second. She nodded. He walked away, counting his steps, letting muscle memory guide him, while his mind worked through the next sequence. Code Amber had 3 phases. Contact. Confirm. Coordinate. Contact had been made. Confirmation had been received. Now came the harder part. Building a path out that did not collapse under pressure. At the service station near the kitchen doors, Malik checked his watch. 8:47. Dinner service would run until at least 10:30. That gave them time, but not much. He glanced at the host's stand, where Marcus stood with the reservation tablet. Their eyes met. Marcus gave the smallest nod. The system was awake. In the kitchen, Anna had already called Detective Ruiz, the liaison the restaurant had worked with for 2 years, ever since a bartender had noticed a teenager slipping something into another teenager's drink, and the whole staff had learned what it meant to intervene. Ruiz had taught them the language of intervention. How to document, how to preserve evidence, how to move someone from danger without making the danger worse. Malik picked up a tray of entrees and moved back into the dining room. Table 42 would need another touchpoint soon, something that gave Elena a reason to move, to shift the geometry of the evening. He watched as Luca's associate, a man named Rocco, leaned across the table and said something that made Luca laugh. Elena did not laugh. She lifted her wineglass and drank, and when she lowered it, her hand shook again. The candle between them flickered. A draft from somewhere, or maybe just the weight of what was about to happen. Malik delivered the entrees to table 18, exchanged pleasantries, moved on. The rhythm of service was a form of cover, a way to be everywhere, and nowhere at once. When he returned to the service station, Anna was there, her face calm. Ruiz is 10 minutes out. He's coordinating with the captain on duty. No lights, no sirens. We do this quiet. Understood. She needs to move first, Anna said. Consent every step. I know. Anna touched his shoulder briefly, a gesture that carried more weight than words. Then she returned to the kitchen, and Malik turned back to the dining room, where the candlelight pooled on white linen and the sound of laughter rose and fell like tide against a wall. At table 42, Elena folded her napkin. She set it beside her plate, a signal in the language of fine dining. Malik saw it and began his approach, carrying a small tray with the leather billfold. Inside, beneath the printed receipt, he had placed a second card. This one read: You choose when. You choose how. Nod when ready. He arrived at the table and set the billfold beside Luca's plate. Whenever you're ready, sir. Luca did not look at him. We'll take our time. Of course. Malik turned to Elena. If you'd like anything else, the kitchen is happy to accommodate. She met his eyes. Held them. Nodded once. Malik walked away, his pulse steady, his hands loose. Behind him, the candle on table 42 burned lower, and the night tightened around its flame like a fist beginning to open. The Portico had been built in the 1960s by a developer who wanted to create a space where power could dine in comfort, where decisions could be made without interruption, where privacy was not a luxury, but a guarantee. The dining room featured high ceilings, paneled walls, and a lighting scheme designed to make everyone look like they belonged in a magazine. It was the kind of place where senators met lobbyists, where CEOs closed deals, where people who did not want to be seen could hide in plain sight. Malik had learned early that the restaurant was also a theater, and every person in it was performing some version of themselves. His job was to be invisible until he was needed, and then to be exactly what the moment required. Tonight, the moment required precision. He moved through the room, clearing plates, pouring water, his attention split between the tasks at hand and the situation unfolding at table 42. Elena had not touched her entree. Luca was on his second glass of wine. Rocco was watching the room like a man paid to notice things. At 8:59, Malik returned to the service station and found Marcus waiting. She signaled. Marcus said quietly. 2 minutes ago. She asked to use the restroom. Did he let her? Not yet. He's making her wait. Malik felt the temperature of his blood drop 1 degree. Control dressed up as consideration. Where's Anna? Prepping the walk-in. We're calling it a potential allergen check. Good. The protocol had been designed for situations exactly like this, where someone needed an exit that did not look like an exit, where the geometry of the room had to shift without anyone noticing the shift. The walk-in cooler was in the back of the kitchen, past the prep stations and the dish pit, a space that was cold and functional but also equipped with a camera and a door that locked from the inside. It was not private, but it was controlled. It was not hidden, but it was removed. Malik picked up a tray and returned to table 42. He arrived just as Luca leaned toward Elena and said something that made her shoulders draw in. Malik cleared his throat softly. Excuse me. I wanted to confirm the preparation of your entree. We've had a concern raised about potential cross-contact with shellfish in the kitchen tonight. If you have any allergies, we'd like to verify the ingredients with you directly. It was a script, one he had practiced in training, and it worked because it sounded official and boring, the kind of thing a restaurant would do to avoid liability. Luca looked annoyed. She's fine. Malik kept his gaze on Elena. "I'd feel more comfortable if I could confirm with you directly, ma'am. It will only take a moment, and Chef Anna is available to walk through the ingredient list." Elena looked at Luca. He sighed, waved a hand. "Go. Make it quick." She stood slowly, smoothing her dress. Malik gestured toward the kitchen doors, and she walked ahead of him, her steps measured. He followed at a distance, close enough to be present, far enough to give her space. They passed through the swinging doors into the heat and light of the kitchen, and Anna appeared immediately, wiping her hands on a towel. "Ma'am, I'm Chef Anna. I understand you may have concerns about allergens. Let's step into the walk-in for a moment where we can review the ingredient logs without the noise." Elena nodded. Her face was pale, her breathing shallow. Anna led the way to the walk-in, pulled the heavy door open, and stepped inside. Elena followed. Malik entered last, positioning himself near the door so it remained slightly ajar, the camera angle clear. The cold air wrapped around them, sharp and clean. Anna pulled a clipboard from the shelf and handed it to Elena, but her voice was soft. "You're safe here. There's a camera recording. Malik and I are witnesses. If you want to leave tonight, we can help. But only if you choose it. Do you understand?" Elena's eyes filled. She nodded. "Do you want to leave?" Another nod, sharper this time. Anna glanced at Malik. "We need to move carefully. If you have anything that documents his behavior, anything that could be evidence, now is the time." Elena reached into the small clutch she had been carrying all evening. Her hands shook as she pulled out a USB drive, small and black. "His accounts. Transactions. Conversations. I've been collecting for 6 months. I didn't know how to get out." Anna took the drive carefully, holding it by the edges. "I'm going to make a copy right now, and we're going to document the chain of custody. Malik, get the camera timestamp." Malik pulled his phone from his pocket, checked the time on the security feed that staff could access. 8:53 and 42 seconds. Anna placed the USB drive on a clean prep towel, photographed it, then plugged it into a laptop mounted on the wall of the walk-in, a device used for inventory tracking. She copied the contents onto a secure drive, logged the action, and handed the original back to Elena. "Keep this with you. If anyone asks, you were checking ingredients with me. We spent 4 minutes. That's reasonable." Elena took the drive, her fingers trembling. "He'll know." "Not tonight," Anna said. "Tonight, we document. Tomorrow, we move. Detective Ruiz is already on his way. He'll meet you separately, get your statement, and coordinate with the district attorney. But right now, we need to get you back to that table without raising suspicion." Malik stepped closer. "Are you comfortable going back out there?" Elena hesitated, then nodded. "If I don't, he'll come looking. Then we do it your way." Malik opened the door wider, letting the kitchen noise flood back in. They stepped out together, Anna leading the way, talking in a normal tone about ingredient sourcing and preparation methods, the kind of conversation that would bore anyone listening. Elena nodded along, her expression carefully neutral. They reached the swinging doors. Anna touched Elena's arm lightly. "You did the right thing." Elena did not respond, but her shoulders lowered slightly, tension releasing in a way that only someone watching closely would notice. She walked back into the dining room, and Malik followed, resuming his role as server, the man who had simply been doing his job. At table 42, Luca looked up as Elena sat down. "Everything fine?" "Yes. Just a misunderstanding about the preparation." "Good." He returned to his conversation with Rocco, dismissing her without another glance. Malik moved on to the next table, but his awareness remained locked on 42. The first part was done. The evidence was copied, documented, and secured. Now came the harder part, getting Elena out safely, without Luca realizing what had happened until it was too late to stop it. At 9:07, the lights in the dining room dimmed slightly, a subtle shift that most people would not notice. It was Marcus at the host stand, controlling the lighting panel, preparing for the next phase. Malik caught his eye across the room and received a slight nod. Everything was in motion. Detective Ruiz would be outside by 9:15, parked in the alley behind the kitchen, engine off, waiting. The plan was simple. Create a reason for Elena to move, give her a path that looked like routine, and let her walk out on her own terms. No drama. No confrontation. Just a woman excusing herself and not coming back. But first, they needed a catalyst. At 9:12, Anna appeared in the doorway of the kitchen, her expression carefully neutral. She caught Malik's attention and gestured him over. He excused himself from table 29 and walked to the kitchen doors. Anna spoke quietly. We're going to have a small issue with the ventilation system. Nothing serious, but enough that we'll need to open the rear exit for a few minutes. That gives her a clear path. How do we get her moving? You're going to offer her a tour of the wine cellar. Tell her we have a selection of rare vintages that might interest her husband. She'll accept. He'll let her go because it sounds like flattery. Malik nodded. It was clean. Plausible. The kind of gesture that happened in expensive restaurants all the time. He returned to the dining room and made his way to table 42. He arrived with a fresh bottle of wine, already opened, and poured a small amount into Luca's glass. Compliments of the house, sir. Our sommelier thought you might enjoy this. It's a 1997 from a small vineyard in Tuscany. Luca tasted it, nodded approvingly. Excellent. Malik poured for both of them, then turned to Luca. If you're interested, we have a selection of rare vintages in our cellar. I'd be happy to show your wife the collection. She might find something for a special occasion. Luca considered this, then waved a hand. Sure, go ahead. Elena looked at Malik, her eyes questioning. He gave the slightest nod. She stood, smoothing her dress again, and followed him toward the back of the dining room. They walked past the bar, past the private dining rooms, toward a hallway that led to the wine cellar and, beyond it, the rear exit. Halfway down the hall, Malik stopped. The door at the end opens to the alley. Detective Ruiz is there. You walk out, you get in his car, and you don't look back. Do you understand? Elena nodded, her breath coming faster now. You're choosing this, Malik said quietly. Every step. If you change your mind, we stop. But if you keep walking, we've got you. She looked at him, and for the first time that night, her expression was not afraid. It was determined. I'm ready. Then go. She walked toward the door, her heels clicking softly on the tile. Malik watched her push the door open, watched the rectangle of night air swallow her silhouette, and then the door closed, and she was gone. He stood there for 5 seconds, counting his breaths. Then he turned and walked back to the dining room, his face calm, his hands steady. At table 42, Luca was still talking to Rocco, still drinking the wine, still unaware that the evening had just changed its shape. Malik returned to the service station and made a note on his pad. 9:17. Subject exited via rear door. Consent confirmed at every step. He folded the note and handed it to Elena, who had appeared beside him. She read it, nodded, and tucked it into her apron. Now we wait, she said. How long? Until he notices. Then we deal with it. Malik picked up a tray and returned to work, moving through the room like nothing had happened, because in the language of the Portico, nothing had. A woman had gone to see the wine cellar. A server had done his job. The night continued, smooth and polished, until the moment it did not. At 9:31, Luca stood up, his expression shifting from relaxed to alert. He looked around the dining room, then at Rocco. Where is she? Rocco stood as well, scanning the room. I'll check. Malik was at table 17, pouring coffee, but he felt the change in the air, the way tension moved through a room like weather. Rocco walked toward the hallway where Elena had gone, his hand already reaching for his phone. Malik set the coffee pot down and moved toward the service station, positioning himself where he could see both the dining room and the hallway. Rocco returned 2 minutes later, his face tight. He leaned down and spoke into Luca's ear. Luca's expression went cold. He stood, threw his napkin on the table, and started toward the door. Malik intercepted him smoothly, his tone polite. Is everything all right, sir? Luca's eyes were flat. Where's my wife? I believe she was viewing the wine cellar. Would you like me to check? I'll check myself. Malik stepped aside, letting him pass, but he followed at a distance, his phone already out, texting Marcus. Subject is aware. Secure all exits. Luca reached the hallway, pushed through the door to the wine cellar, and found it empty. He spun, his face flushing. Where is she? I'm not sure, sir. Perhaps she stepped outside for air? Luca moved toward the rear exit, but Marcus was already there, standing in front of the door with a clipboard. I'm sorry, sir, but this exit is temporarily closed due to a ventilation issue. Health and safety protocol. Get out of my way. I can't do that, sir. Marcus's voice was calm, but his posture was solid. If you'd like to exit through the front, I'm happy to escort you. Luca stared at him, then turned and walked back toward the dining room, Rocco following. Malik watched them leave, then pulled out his phone and called Detective Ruiz. He knows. She's clear? She's clear, Ruiz said. We're en route to the station. She's giving a statement now. Good. Malik ended the call and walked back into the dining room. Luca was at the host stand, speaking in a low, furious tone to the manager, who had appeared from the back office. The manager listened, nodded, and offered the kind of calm, soothing responses that hospitality professionals use to de-escalate situations. Luca was not calmed. He threw a wad of cash on the stand and left, Rocco trailing behind him. The dining room returned to its baseline hum. Conversations resumed. Wine was poured. Desserts were served. Malik moved through the space, his body going through the motions, his mind elsewhere. At 10:45, service ended. The last guests left, and the staff began the closing routine. Malik wiped down tables, rolled silverware, restocked the service stations. Anna came out of the kitchen, her apron stained, her face tired. She stood beside him and looked at the empty dining room. "You did good. We did good. Yeah." She paused. Ruiz called. "She's safe. He's got her statement, the USB drive is logged, and the DA's office is already reviewing the case. They're moving fast." Malik nodded. He felt the tension in his shoulders begin to release, slow and careful, like a knot coming undone. What happens now? Now we document everything. Timeline, actions, witnesses. We build the case so it holds. And her? She's in a safe location. Victim advocacy is with her. She's not alone. Malik set down the cloth he had been using and leaned against the edge of the table. The candles had been extinguished hours ago, but he could still see the way the light had reflected off the card, the way Elena's fingers had rested on the napkin, the way she had nodded. Consent. Choice. Agency. The words felt fragile, but they were also the foundation of everything that had happened tonight. "You think he'll come back?" Malik asked. "Maybe. But he won't find her. And by the time he figures out what happened, the case will be locked." Malik nodded. He picked up the cloth again and went back to work, because there was always more work, and because the rhythm of it helped him think. Tomorrow, he would go to the police station and give his statement. Tomorrow, Anna would hand over the security footage and the incident log. Tomorrow, the machine of justice would begin to turn, slow and imperfect, but turning nonetheless. Tonight, a woman had walked out of a dining room and into a different life. That was enough. The next morning, Malik sat in a small conference room at the police station, a cup of bad coffee cooling in front of him. Across the table, Detective Ruiz reviewed his notes, flipping through pages filled with timestamps and coordinates and descriptions. Beside him sat Assistant District Attorney Stone, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a briefcase full of files. "Walk me through it again," Stone said. "From the moment you heard her speak." Malik did. He described the tone of Elena's voice, the position of her hands, the way she had avoided eye contact. He explained the protocol, the card, the silent alarm. He detailed the walk-in, the USB drive, the chain of custody. He recounted the exit, the timing, the confirmation of consent at every step. He spoke in the dry, factual language of someone who had been trained to document, and when he finished, Stone leaned back in her chair. "This is solid," she said. "Clean chain of custody, multiple witnesses, video evidence, and voluntary consent documented at every stage. If the contents of that USB hold up, we've got him." "They'll hold up," Ruiz said. "Forensic accounting is already on it. Looks like financial records for a dozen businesses, shell companies, wire transfers. This isn't just domestic violence. This is RICO territory." Stone tapped her pen on the table. "I'll need you to testify. Both you and Chef Anna. Are you prepared for that?" Malik nodded. "Yes." "Good. We'll depose you formally next week. In the meantime, stay available. And if anyone approaches you, anyone at all, you call me immediately." She slid a business card across the table. Malik took it, tucked it into his wallet. "What about Elena?" "She's in protective custody. We're coordinating with victim advocacy. She'll testify when we go to trial, but for now, she's off the grid." "Does she know we're doing this?" "All of it?" Stone's expression softened slightly. "She does. And she's grateful. But Malik, you need to understand something. What you did last night was exactly right. You followed protocol, you respected her agency, and you didn't try to be a hero. That's why this is going to work. The moment you start improvising, the moment you step outside the system, you put her at risk. Do you understand?" "I understand." "Good." Stone stood, gathered her files. "We'll be in touch." Malik left the station and walked back to his car, the morning sun bright and indifferent. He drove to the Portico, parked in the employee lot, and went inside through the back door. The kitchen was quiet, prep work just beginning. Anna was at her station, chopping onions with the kind of precision that came from 20 years behind a knife. She looked up as he entered. How'd it go? Stone says it's solid. They're moving forward. Good. Anna set down her knife, wiped her hands. Nina Park called. She's a reporter. Wants to do a piece on the protocol. I told her I'd talk to you first. What kind of piece? The kind that doesn't name names but shows how it works. The kind that might make other restaurants think about doing the same thing. Malik considered this. He did not want attention. He did not want to be framed as some kind of savior. But he also knew that systems only worked if people knew they existed. What do you think? I think we talk to her. Carefully. We focus on the protocol, not the people. We make it about process, not heroism. Okay, set it up. Anna nodded. Returned to her onions. Malik went to the locker room, changed into his uniform, and clocked in. The lunch shift would start in an hour. There were tables to set, menus to print, specials to memorize. The work was the same as it always was, and that was a comfort. At noon, the dining room filled. Malik moved through the space, taking orders, pouring water, clearing plates. Table 42 was occupied by a young couple celebrating an anniversary. They were happy, laughing, holding hands across the table. Malik served them with the same quiet efficiency he brought to every table, and when they left, he cleared their plates and reset the table for the next guests. At 2:30, the lunch rush ended. Malik took his break in the back alley, leaning against the brick wall, letting the cool air clear his head. Marcus came out a few minutes later, lit a cigarette, and stood beside him. They did not speak for a while. Then Marcus said, "You hear from Ruiz?" "This morning." "It's moving." "Good." Marcus took a drag, exhaled slowly. "You ever think about what would have happened if we didn't have the protocol?" "All the time." "Yeah." Marcus flicked ash onto the pavement. "Me too." They stood in silence, two men who had learned that the right system, applied at the right time, could change the outcome of a night. It was not glamorous. It was not dramatic. It was just structure, applied with intention. And sometimes, that was enough. 3 weeks later, Nina Park arrived at the Portico with a notebook and a recorder. She sat in the back corner of the dining room, away from the lunch crowd, and listened as Malik and Anna explained the protocol. They walked her through the training, the signals, the chain of custody, the coordination with law enforcement. They showed her the card, the silent alarm, the documentation process. They did not name Elena. They did not describe Luca. They spoke in generalities, in systems, in the language of intervention. Nina took notes, asked questions, nodded. When they finished, she set down her pen. This should be standard. Every restaurant, every hotel, everywhere. It should, Anna agreed. But it's not. Why? Because it requires training. Resources. A willingness to get involved. Most places don't want the liability. Nina leaned back in her chair. What made you decide to do it? Malik and Anna exchanged a glance. Anna spoke first. Because we saw what happens when you don't. A kid almost got assaulted in our bar 2 years ago. We caught it, but barely. After that, we couldn't pretend we didn't know. So we built something. And it works? It worked last month, Malik said quietly. That's all I can tell you. Nina nodded, closed her notebook. I'll write this carefully. I'll focus on the system. But people need to know this is possible. Then tell them, Anna said. Just tell them the right way. The article ran 3 weeks later, in the local paper and online. It did not name the Portico. It did not name Malik or Anna or Elena. It described a protocol, a training program, a partnership between hospitality and law enforcement. It included quotes from victim advocates, statistics on intervention success rates, and a sidebar explaining how other establishments could implement similar systems. It was dry, factual, and effective. Within a week, Anna received calls from 6 other restaurants asking about the training. Within a month, the Hospitality Union added a session on intervention protocols to its annual conference. Within 3 months, Detective Ruiz was teaching a course on bystander response at the police academy. The system spread quietly, the way good ideas often do, passed from person to person until it became something that simply existed. In early December, Malik received a card in the mail. No return address. Inside, a single sentence written in careful handwriting. Thank you for seeing me. No signature. He knew who it was from. He placed the card on his dresser, propped against the lamp, and left it there. On Christmas Eve, the Portico was fully booked. Malik worked a double shift, moving through the dining room with the same steady efficiency he brought to every night. At table 42, a family celebrated a grandmother's 80th birthday. They laughed, toasted, took photos. Malik served them with quiet professionalism, and when they left, he cleared the table and reset it for the next guests. At the end of the night, after the last plate had been cleared and the last glass washed, Malik stood in the empty dining room and looked at the tables. They were just tables. Just linen and silverware and candles waiting to be lit. But they were also stages, small theaters where people revealed themselves in the way they ordered, the way they spoke, the way they touched or did not touch the person across from them. Anna came out of the kitchen, her coat on, her bag over her shoulder. You ready? Yeah. They walked out together, into the cold December air. The city was quiet, the streets dressed in lights and garland. Anna locked the door behind them, and they stood on the sidewalk for a moment, breathing in the stillness. You did good this year, Anna said. We did good. Yeah. She smiled, tired but genuine. Merry Christmas, Malik. Merry Christmas. They went their separate ways, footsteps echoing on the empty pavement. Malik drove home through streets that glittered with holiday decorations, past houses lit from within, past lives he would never know. He thought about Elena, wherever she was, and hoped she was safe. He thought about Luca, sitting in a cell, waiting for trial. He thought about the protocol, spreading slowly through the city, one training session at a time. When he got home, he made tea and sat by the window, watching the snow begin to fall. The card from Elena was still on his dresser, a quiet reminder that systems worked when people chose to make them work. It was not about heroism. It was not about drama. It was about seeing someone, asking the right question, and building a path out that respected their agency at every step. The next morning, Malik returned to the Portico. There was a staff meeting before service, and Anna stood at the front of the room with a small laminated card in her hand. It was the same card Malik had given Elena, the one with 3 lines. Are you safe? Nod if you need help. I can call discreet support. Anna held it up so everyone could see. We're making these standard, she said. Every server, every bartender, every host. You'll carry them in your apron. You'll know when to use them. And if you ever need to activate Code Amber, you know the steps. Questions? There were a few. Anna answered them patiently, clearly. When the meeting ended, she handed out the cards, one to each staff member. Malik took his, felt the